Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Lost Archive. This is a Call Cthulhu RPG. We'll be using Gemini this time. I was having some issues with GPT earlier, so I've copied the entire conversation to Gemini, and so far it looks like it's working okay. Now, it will not give us skill checks. I will be responsible for that. I will figure out a skill check that's relevant to the response if needed, as I want to keep this a co-op AI RPG. Because again, this is at the heart of it, solo play. So currently we're in the hospital. We just woke up. We were probably unconscious for a few hours after a sudden collapse because we witnessed a paranormal event. We saw our great great grandfather. His name was Edwin Holloway, and he was drenched, almost appeared to be transparent in some degree, and was basically bound to a manuscript that had our character's name in it. Our character is Dr. David Holloway. So the manuscript, we could still be back at our office, at his office. But right now, our focus is on the hospital. We're currently in the hospital bed. The doctor, I think, just walked in. Our ex-wife, uh, what's her name? Catherine is standing by our side. She's irritated because we interrupted um, her wedding planning with a new with a new fiance. Our son is there too, and so is Rebecca, who is our essentially coworker, a junior archivist. So now with Gemini's instructions, it will only give us up to 2 sentences per response. Nothing else. No, well, it's not supposed to. We'll see what happens, but no skill recommendations. That's up to us. Okay. Now the doctor walks in. So, like it says here, Catherine crosses her arms. She's irritated, mentioning her wedding plan was interrupted. Blah blah blah. But she is genuinely concerned about us because again, she still cares for us but we don't have to dive too much into the backstory between what was the issues with the marriage. We're more focused here on the whole Cthulhu mythos, but we don't want to ignore the concept, the aspect that we don't want to ignore the idea that she's there. So, uh, David, let's see, I can use the microphone. What should we say here? David answers. David says he's glad to see Catherine's here and Jacob. He will look to Rebecca and say, "What happened?" I don't think David. Let's see. First, let's ask the Oracle, because this is what Gemini is. Does David have any recollection of what transpired before he collapsed? Now, we can do a check here. We can do a no check, I think, or let's see. I'm looking through the skill tree, seeing if anything would be related to mentality. Psychology is more of observation, trying to basically get a read on someone else. But to be honest, I could just say let's ask the Oracle. Because there is no in here, there is an idea, but let's see what the Oracle says. I'm thinking probably we might have vague, we might have some visions. David's mind is still hazy, but fragments of the encounter, called it, flash through his thoughts the manuscript, the figure, Edwin, the whispers, the darkness. So he doesn't recall the entire conversation, he doesn't recall the conversation in its entirety. He strictly just has fragments. Again, it's fresh. He's fresh from waking up. He's in his hospital bed. Okay. David looks to Catherine, nods, thanks her for being here. He looks to Jacob and says, "How are you, my son?" What does Jacob say? Jacob shifts uncomfortably, glancing at Catherine before looking back at David with a worried expression. "I'm okay, Dad. But what happened to you? Rebecca called Mom, said you were here, seeing things." Okay. So let's say Catherine being the ex-wife, though again uh, not completely arrogant. She does have genuine concern for us. Story hack: Catherine. Cat. No, 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 no. Okay, let's see. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so story hack. Uh, Catherine interrupts her son. Okay, let's see what he says. Interrupts her son. I believe she's going to be frustrated. Jacob, honey, why don't you go see if the nurse has any juice boxes? I need to talk to your father for a minute. That's good. Okay, that's what I assumed was going to happen. But now, Rebecca. Okay, well, let's just see what does Catherine say. Let's pick this back here. What does Catherine say to David? All right. I paused there because I want to make sure that it doesn't send automatically. I want to have control of sending the text. I'm thinking we might do a roll here. Upcoming. Catherine waits until Jacob is out of earshot, then turns to David, her expression hardening. Okay, David, what the hell was that about? Rebecca called me in panic, saying you were hallucinating and babbling on about your great great grandfather. All right, so here is a potential plot hole of the AI. Let's say David turns to Rebecca. She's still standing in the corner there, arms crossed or in front of her, waiting for a moment to speak. David turns to Rebecca and asks her, what exactly happened? Does she remember anything? The strange figure in his office. He mentions a few vague memories. So was any of it real? Did he imagine all of it? Was he passed out? Did he collapse? Is he still wet? We still remember he was wet when Rebecca found her with the security guard. Rebecca's eyes widen slightly. She glances at Catherine before turning back to David. I don't know how to explain it. There was this book, and then it was like your great great grandfather was there, but not really. He was see through, and the book started floating, and there was water everywhere. Then he just collapsed. Okay. David turns back to Catherine and says, something out of this world happened, and I don't know how to explain it. Karen, Catherine interrupts and says, is this all some kind of joke between you two? You're wasting my time. I want her to see this as some kind of joke. Again, this is the first time that this paranormal stuff is happening. Maybe perhaps David has encountered something before, but again, our sanity is at 50%, or was at 50. Now it's at 42. So with our future family roll, it's a less of a chance to survive. Catherine's expression shifts from concern to anger. This isn't some kind of joke, is it? You two are wasting my time with this ridiculous story. I've been waiting to plan, David. I don't have time for your games. Now, what if? Let's ask the Oracle. I'm just gonna see if we can do a roll here. I don't see any moment for a roll. Okay, moving on. Does Rebecca have the manuscript with her, or did she leave it back at the office, knowing its danger? Or maybe she brought it because it could be of use. I want to see if she actually has it with her, like wrapped in her. It's in her hands. It's like it's folded up. So psychology. Okay, Rebecca shakes her head, her eyes wide. No, I left it. I don't want it to touch. I didn't want to touch it after what happened, but maybe we should go back and get it. It could be important, right? So the AI thought I was talking from David's perspective. That's fine. It's like I'm kind of speaking as the keeper to the AI, and it speaks back as Rebecca. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Um, hmm. So the doesn't have the manuscript with her, which again, that was most likely the probability. Um, sorry, I thought I cut myself. Okay. Now, Catherine is visibly impatient. She's going to probably storm out of here. I think that's going to be her first cameo for this event, for this campaign. Story hack: Catherine appears visibly angry, impatient. She storms out of the hospital room while saying something on the way out to David and then Rebecca. Maybe a form of jealousy, perhaps? I don't think there's any chemistry between Rebecca and David. David's what, 42? Rebecca's the. We actually haven't gotten age for her just yet. Catherine throws her hands up in exasperation. This is unbelievable. I'm out of here. You two can deal with this, whatever it is. And David, she pauses at the door, fixing him with a glare. If this is some elaborate way to get out of alimony, you can forget it. She turns to Rebecca, her voice softly slang, and you, Rebecca, you're a smart girl. Don't get caught up in this craziness. Then she's gone, the door clicking shut behind her. All right, the doctor. Oh, right, the doctor. Question for the Oracle. Was the doctor in the hospital room the entire time throughout the conversation, waiting patiently, not wanting to interrupt? I'm thinking he, because I thought he did enter in the last episode. The doctor clears his throat, stepping forward with a slight frown. Well, that was interesting. Now, Dr. Holloway, perhaps we can focus on your health. You seem to have suffered a severe shock, and I'd like to run some tests. Okay, so Rebecca is going to, let's say the doctor says to Rebecca, perhaps it's a good time for you to come back later or to leave. I'm going to take care of Dr. David Holloway. Oh, let's story hack. The doctor tells Rebecca, perhaps it's a good time for her to leave. Thank you for visiting. David says, thank you for coming, Rebecca. Please get some rest. I will see you in the morning. I should be out of here in no time. The doctor reemphasizes, reiterates that he will take care of David and for her not to worry. All right. I do like how Gemini's actually um, spitting out these texts. So the doctor nods to Rebecca. Miss Thorne, perhaps it's best for you. Miss Thorne. Oh, yeah. I remember the last name. I forgot. That's the last name. Miss Thorne. She's single. Perhaps it's best if you head home now. Dr. Holloway's in good hands here. Rebecca hesitates, then smiles faintly at David. Okay, get some rest, Dr. Holloway. I'll see you tomorrow. The doctor guides Rebecca towards the door, reassuring her that David is in good hands. Okay. Now, let's say, do we do a time jump or what happens next? I want to see how the AI can take this. Okay, question for the Oracle. Is there a time jump or what happens next with the doctor? Now we're in a filler scene. This is not exactly, something of excitement. The doctor turns back to David, his expression shifting from polite concern to something more serious. He pulls up a chair and sits beside the bed. Now, Dr. Holloway, let's talk about what really happened. All right, so story hack. Let's do a time jump. How did the conversation go? So we're just going to do a little fast forward here. The doctor leans back, thoughtful frown creasing his brow. Well, Dr. Holloway, you're certainly giving a lot of concern, but I must admit, I've never encountered a case quite like this before, like years before. Oh, is he a psychologist? Oracle, question. Is this a medical doctor, perhaps a brain surgeon, or is this an actual psychologist? Question or question. What is the doctor's name? The doctor's name tag reads Dr. Alex Morgan, Neurology. He seems more interested in David's mental state than any physical injuries. Okay, so he is a neurologist. All right, let me put a little. Well, is this worth? I want to save space here in my character sheet. I'm not exactly, halfway there, but I want to save space for important characters. Um, because then I'll have to get it. I could just get an additional piece of paper, but I'm so far just up to the halfway mark. So David is surprised. He thought that this was the general medical doctor, but can see that this is going to take a while. And David asked the doctor, "What's the problem here? Is it because of what I saw? Was it all hallucination? Because it seemed way too real, even with the multiple witnesses. I have Rebecca, the security guard potentially, because we knew the security guard was in there, saw the puddle of water, etc." Dr. Morgan leans forward, his expression unreadable. Dr. Holloway, hallucinations can be incredibly vivid, especially under stress. There's also the matter of water damage at the library, the missing book, and the fact that your story aligns with some unusual historical records I've come across. Oh, so right. Okay, which hospital are we at? What hospital are we in within the Boston metropolitan area? This is a question for the Oracle. I want to say that so that Gemini doesn't think I'm like talking from David's perspective, from his perspective. The Sterascent and standard equipment suggests a large generic city hospital, perhaps Massachusetts General or Tufts Medical Center, given their proximity to the Boston Public Library. Okay, so um, David will ask the doctor, what's his name? Alex. Okay, Dr. Alex Morgan. I'm going to write this down now because Dr. Morgan. Okay, so let's say Dr. Alex Morgan. He is a neurologist. Neurologist. Oops, spelled that wrong. Neurologist. There we go. Okay, that's fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, now with that general lore information, I'm thinking that David here is going to do a psychology roll to see if Dr. Alex Morgan is has some history with this kind of occurrences in Boston area. So again, my psychology is only 15, and that's not so impressive. That's pretty bad. So let's roll it. I gotta do 15 or less. Oh my god, I got 15 exactly. 15 exactly. Okay. I rolled 15 on psychology, which is a success, barely. David wants to figure out if this doctor has had past experiences with individuals who have witnessed strange paranormal activities in the Boston area. Okay, so that's a roll for today. So let me mark off, and I completely forgot to do something. Luckily, I haven't sent it yet, but I forgot to improve the rolls from the prior episode. Let me pause the video, and I'll handle that and let you know how it turned out. Or I can do it now, actually. So what you do, you gotta roll at or above, I believe, or above your current state for the skill. So first is history, which is 70, and that's pretty good. Okay, oh, 78. So it goes up by, I roll a d10, goes up by 7. So wow, that's actually really good. So 77 is going to be my new history number, and I erase the check mark from prior. Next was library use, so we will re-roll the d100. I got 39, which is a fail. So I'm going to erase that check mark. That does not improve. Going on the list, that's it. I think that's all the successes we had from last episode. Now I marked my first one for today for psychology. And now let's send this response. Uh, Dr. Morgan hesitates, his gaze flickering to the door before returning to David. Dr. Holloway. Boston has a long history of unfortunate events. Let's just say I've learned to keep an open mind. Interesting. Okay, so David leans up from his hospital bed. whispers to Dr. Morgan if they can close the door. He wants to tell him something specific that he remembers. And first, we're going to roll a knowledge. Well, I want him to remember what has happened. He's trying to recollect what transpired, and what he remembers best is probably his name in the manuscript. I think that detail doesn't deserve a roll. That's just the biggest plot. That's the biggest plot point, perhaps, in the last episode. So let's keep it as it is. Let's see what happens. What does the doctor do? We have two doctors in the scene. I'm trying to keep track. Dr. Morgan, Dr. Howard, Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard. If you guys have seen Three Stooges, that's a great episode. Dr. Morgan nods slowly, rising to close the door before returning to the seat. He leans in, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. What is it, Dr. Holloway? What do you remember? Out of all of the few moments he can recollect, he mentions, David mentions, seeing his name in a manuscript that's more than 100 years old, and seeing his great great grandfather appear in his office in some soaked spiritual form. That's probably what he remembers best. I don't think he's remember all the little weird, vague details that the spirit told David in person, like blood and all that stuff. Dr. Morgan's eyebrows rise before he remains calm. That's quite the story, Dr. Holloway. Can you tell me more about this manuscript? I have an idea. My brain's working. I have an idea for Dr. Morgan. Though I'm going to save it for. It's basically, I don't want to spoil it. It has to do with your typical Cthulhu mythos and situational garbage that is easy to it's easy to think of. But basically, I think Dr. Morgan has is part of a certain organization that deals with this mythos. He's not just a doctor, a neurologist. He has extensive connections with the underworld. So I'm going to keep it at that. I have an idea where he can fit in the end if there is a big climactic, Cthulhu reveal or some mythos like that, but we'll see. Um, let's roll for it. So I'll just do I don't know, idea. Let's just roll for idea. I have 65 or less. So 65 or less, 71. That's a fail. David cannot remember any other specifics. He does remember that the spirit talked, but all of that is washed away. He only remembers the two details of seeing his great great grandfather, and his name, David's name, mentioned in the historical document. Okay. So far, Gemini is doing pretty well. I have to give it credit here. Dr. Morgan's expression turns thoughtful. A family connection, then. Perhaps this wasn't a random hallucination. Perhaps it was a message. David speaks to the doctor, mentioning that he does believe the spirit of his great great grandfather spoke to him several times, but those words are forgotten. Suddenly, story hack, David has a pulsing pain in his head, causing him to lie back, covering his eyes like it's some kind of migraine. So this is just some flair for the scene because we're just chit chatting, which is common in Call of Cthulhu. I love how I keep saying this is informational purposes only for medical advice or diagnosis. Consult with a professional. Okay, that's fine. Gemini's being safe here. The doctor reaches for David's wrist, checking his pulse as concern flickers across his face. Dr. Holloway, what's wrong? Are you feeling all right? Let's do a sanity check. I think the I think the world of Cthulhu mythos is trying to grab David by the head, the mind, and his again, I forgot his name, Edwin, great great grandfather. Edwin is trying to speak to him from a distance. So we'll have to do a sanity check, which actually we do after the experience. David closes his eyes and he can see, re-envisioning what transpired earlier, but this time his great-great-grandfather Edwin Holloway is trying to speak with him. He can see Edwin reaching out to David, but through a vision, as David is tossing and turning in his bed, screaming for it to stop. Then we'll do a sanity check. Edwin's form flickers, his voice a gurgling echo of the tide. It takes all those written. The image fades, leaving David grasping to his bed. The doctor's voice seems distant, concerned. Okay, sanity check. All right, 42 or less. 80. Oh, 89. That's way up there. So I'm going to do a D4 down. So we lose 3. So 41, 40, 39. So we're down to 39. However, I think if he does rest tonight, then we will recover at least D or D4, D6 amount of sanity points. Okay. Failed sanity roll. David falls unconscious. Now we are in the next morning. David awakens. So now it's next morning. Just vaguely keeping track of time of day. Sunlight streams through the window, painting the sterile room in pale gold. David's eyes flutter open, his body heavy with exhaustion. The events of the past night feel distant, like a fever dream. A figure sits behind his bed, a familiar silhouette against the light. Oh, okay. Now, let's recover a few sanity points, just because we rested. I don't know if that's actual mechanic in the game, but I'm just going to be house ruling it. So, now we're back to 41. Or, well, we're close back to where we were before. Okay, here we go. 41 sanity points. There we go. Okay. David rubs his eyes, tries to sit up. Who is standing in next to him? The figure turns and David's heart skips a beat. It's his son Jacob, looking at him with a worried expression. Okay, Jacob's back. Perhaps they revisited. Let's say that Jacob. Okay, David's surprised. David says to Jacob, "Son, I didn't expect you. Where's your mother? What are you doing here?" Jacob shifts uncomfortably in his chair. "Mom said you were sick, Dad. She had to go to work, but she said I can stay with you for a bit." All right, so now we have a moment with our son here. David leans up fully and sits off the side of the bed. He says to Jacob, "Son, I'm very sorry for what you're witnessing. This is something I would have never wanted you to see. Me in such despair and obliviousness. But never mind about me. How are you? How is school?" So he's just trying to steer the conversation to his son. It's doing good. Uh, Jacob shrugs, looking down at his hands. Because remember, his son, I think we made his son to be like a kid, like maybe first grade, 6 years old. Okay, so he's not exactly out of elementary school yet. But we had a history test today, but I think, well, if again, how old is our character? 42. Let's let's make his son's age older. History test today, but I thought he did all right. He pauses, then looks up at David that has an expression. "Dad, are you going to be okay? If you're really sick last night, let's say his son is 12 years old. I'm going to bump that up to 12, and he's in, I think they'll qualify for middle school, if I'm not mistaken. 12 years old. That's roughly, yeah, I think that's, what was that? Because high school, you're 14, 15. Let me pause it for a second. That's like middle school, sixth or so, sixth grade or so. I was writing down middle school. There we go. Uh, some lore information about Jacob. This is for the Oracle. Don't advance the story just yet. His son, Jacob, is 12 years old in middle school, and he actually lives with his mother and the potential fiance of her. Just kind of giving information to the Oracle so it knows how to lay things out, foundation moving forward. All right, let's see what it does. It'll probably be like a laugh is actually the emoji. Jacob's age and school situation suggests a level of maturity and awareness beyond his years. His concern for David hints at deeper emotional connection despite the distance created by the divorce. Okay, so he said history test. Okay, all right. Let's just skip ahead. This is some some bonding after the divorce, etc. Story hack. Let's do a time skip. Eventually, David is discharged. Rebecca is there to pick him up. Jacob is picked up by his ex-wife, Catherine. They exchange handshakes, and Catherine hopes that he does feels better. She apologizes for her attitude yesterday, but she's still frustrated. Jacob waves goodbye as they drive off. Rebecca is standing with David outside the hospital doors, about to leave to her car, but Dr. Morgan runs up to David, appearing urgent, with a note. Because we did a huge time skip there. All right, let's see what GPT does, or Gemini does here. Because again, this is Dr. Morgan slightly out of breath, catches David and Rebecca before they reach the car. Dr. Holloway, he says, pressing a folded note into David's hand. I found something in the library archives. Something you. Oh no no no! Wait, not library archives. That doesn't make sense because libraries close. How would he get there? Correction: the note or the folder he has is actually from the hospital records. Perhaps it's related to the event that transpired last night. That's how I want to do it. I want this note to be from the hospital. So there's some connection between his experience and Dr. Morgan's past occurrences. Dr. Morgan's eyes are filled with a mixture of concern and urgency. This is from your intake last night, he says, voice low. It seems there is more to your family history than you might realize. Okay. Rebecca appears concerned, though interested. David opens the folder. What does he see? Let's see what this folder says, or what this document says. Tying this all together. It's interesting. Inside the folder, okay, it broke the rules a little bit. Well, actually, that's fine. Inside the folder, David finds a copy of his medical records from his previous night, but amidst the standard forms of blood results, there's a handwritten note from the attending physician, scrawled and hurried, almost frantic handwriting. Patient exhibits signs of extreme psychological distress, coupled with physical symptoms consistent with saltwater drowning, yet no evidence of actual immersion. Patient's blood work shows abnormally high levels of sodium and potassium, along with traces of unknown organic compounds. Further investigation required. Huh. David appears confused. He looks to Dr. Morgan and says, what does this all mean? Salt water? So what I saw was real then. Interesting. So, oh, Dr. Morgan's expression is grim. I don't know for sure, Dr. Holloway, but I think what you saw might have been more real than any of us can imagine. All right. Let's say it's very early in the morning. Rebecca interrupts. She says, "Look, I'm sorry, doctors, but we have to go back. I can't be late for work." Doc, Dr. Holloway, can we please go? We can discuss this on the way. She thanks Dr. Morgan for the help. David looks to the doctor, shakes his hand, and he holds onto the folder, says to Dr. Morgan, "Thank you for everything, doctor. I will keep in touch." Okay, Dr. Morgan nods, his gaze lingering on the folder in David's hands. "Please do, Dr. Holloway, and be careful." Before leaving, Dr. Morgan remembers to give David a card of someone, a specialist who deals with the paranormal, though this is under the table, and Dr. Morgan reiterates not to tell anyone about this. So I want to introduce a character that specializes in all of these shenanigans, so that we can. Uh, David has a source of information. David has a source he can go to, a resource. Dr. Morgan pulls out a card, scribbling something on the back before handing it to David. "This might be helpful," he says quietly. "But be discreet, Dr. Holloway. Not everyone is ready for the truth." All right, so I'm going to write down. Well, actually, we know the information is. What does the card say? This card reads Professor Elias Price, Miskatonic University Department of Anthropology and Folklore, specializing in Esoteric traditions. Call after 8 p.m. only. On the back, Dr. Morgan has scrawled, "He's one of us." Ooh. I'm going to pause this and copy all of this down. So I copied the information down. We went to Yale. Miskatonic, if I'm pronouncing that right, is part of, I think is often used in Call of Cthulhu. Due to I'm naive here, so I don't know if that's a real university or if it's part of the lore. Whatever. It's in this. It's in our story here. So, um, let's see. David reads the card. He whispers to Dr. Morgan, "What do you mean he's one of us? What exactly are you part of, Doctor?" This could be playing right into my idea here. Dr. Morgan's eyes dart around before he leans in close, his voice barely a whisper. "Those who see the truth, Dr. Holloway, those who know what the reality is, thinner than most believe." Dr. Morgan smirks, turns around, and walks back into the hospital. Rebecca grabs David and tells him, "Let's go, we'll talk in the car." Pulls him frantically back into the car as they drive off, back to the library. Actually, would he be sent back home? I think he'd be sent home, yeah, not back to, oh yeah, okay, so for David's car, Rebecca, okay, let's see what happens. Maybe he gets a day off because of what happened. The car speeds away from the hospital, leaving Dr. Morgan's enigmatic smile fading in the distance. Rebecca, let's see. Rebecca grips the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. "Dr. Holloway," she says, her voice trembling. "What was that all about? Who was that man?" David is scratching his head. He's looking ahead while driving, while Rebecca is ignoring the speed limit. He says, "Rebecca, please, slow down. I think I'm going to take the day off. Can you just drive me to my car at the library, and I'm going to speak to, and if you can speak to the boss, tell him I'm out for today." because he needs to. Again, that was a lot to experience. Rebecca glances down that back of the road, her foot easing off the gas pedal. Okay, Dr. Holly, but are you sure you're all right? You've been acting strangely since last night. Well, yeah, no. We just saw a cryptic water spirit ancestor before our eyes. Of course, we're going to act strange. Okay. David looks sarcastically to Rebecca and says, "You're joking, right? Are you just trying to cheer me up after what happened?" Maybe she's just. Again, we haven't really fleshed out her character too much. We don't know if she's. We don't know much about her in general. Perhaps this will be a good reveal. Detective Man, just a weak smile. I appreciate that, Rebecca, but I think I need a bit of time to process everything. So that is kind of okay. Well, I'll roll with it. Story hack: Rebecca smirks. She was just trying to cheer up David. I just want to nudge the AI in the correct direction. Rebecca smirks widens. Don't worry, Dr. Holly. We'll figure this out together. Okay. They do eventually get to the library. It's very early morning, an hour before the library opens. While they park, David sees his car in the distance. He asks Rebecca, can she mention to the boss that he will be out for today? Can he trust her with that? And to make sure that his office door is locked and to make sure that manuscript is still there. Rebecca nods, a determined glint in her eyes. You can count on me, Dr. Holloway. I'll make sure everything's taken care of. Just focus on getting some rest. So are we good? Okay, so there's a driving skill. A drive automobile 20, which is this again. This is based on. I'm going to bump that up because using the skill is mostly for dangerous situations. It's heavy rain. You're in a winding road, but just to drive from point A to point B in a common morning, just a regular morning when there's no real like wet hazardous weather, you don't really need to roll for it. I remember that little detail in the newer modern Call of Cthulhu game because this is based on the first or second edition classic, which again I do love the character sheet a lot more. It's simple and uh, yeah, it's just simple. So he thanks her for the help and the drive. He gets out of the car with his belongings in the back, his briefcase, etc., and makes his way to his car. Rebecca parks, walks the other way into the library. Do we notice anything strange about our car? Wanna I don't know. I'm experimenting here. I don't know if this will actually pan out, but we can do a spot hidden roll. As Dave approaches his car, he notices something odd, a faint shimmering residue on the driver's side door handle, like dried seawater. Mm. Spot hidden roll. Let's do spot hidden. So 25 or less. Okay. Spot hidden roll, 25 or less. 44, fail. I failed a spot hidden roll. When David grabs the handle, what happens? A jolt of icy energy surges through David's arm as he touches the handle, the vision flashing before his eyes. A vast underwater city, Cyclopean ruins by creatures, and coarse whispers echoing through the depth. That's a lot. That's probably too much for this moment right now. Okay, so phosphorescent and cyclopean. Words I typically don't I don't see on a daily basis, but that's okay. Um, I'm trying to figure out if this is necessary right now because he grabs the door handle. There's salt water in it, but would the spirit of his great great grandfather go all the way out here to grab the handle. I don't think so. No. Let's walk this back. Let's walk this back. None of that happened. He gets inside the car, but he takes the business card out of Professor Elias Price, and instead of going home to rest, he decides to drive to Miskatonic University to see Professor Elias. The engine spurs to life, and David pulls away from the curb, the card clutching in his hand. The road stretches before him, leading him towards the unknown, towards Miskatonic University, Professor Elias Price. Okay, so that was a little too much for the moment. I think. I mean, it makes it's that's a lot. Like that is I don't think we're there yet. Depending on how long I want this campaign to go, I don't think we're going to see a vision of a city or some underwater metropolis, or underwater, Atlantis kind of vision just yet. I want it to focus on the small, nitty-gritty details of his his great-grandfather first, so that he sees the visions of him, but nothing really else. No Cthulhu, and no the other gods, elder gods. So he's driving, and after a long drive, David finds himself at the gates of Miskatonic University, its imposing Gothic architecture looming against the gray sky. Okay, now it's obviously during the day. The university is open to the public, or it's open. Obviously, school's probably in session. Okay. Does David find a parking spot? Is the school very busy? The campus seems eerily quiet for a weekday morning. Only a few students hurrying between the opposing buildings. David finds a parking spot near the Department of Anthropology and Folklore. All right. Now, we gotta find this guy. So let's see. Make maps is one of our skills. Trying to figure out how if we can roll for this. If he knows his way around the. Let's see. Is there a directory anywhere on site for him to like a map? A Weatherstone directory stands near the entrance, listing the various apartments and faculty offices. Okay. Is Professor Elias Price name on the directory? Just call after 8 p.m. So the professor name is conspicuously absent. Oh. David, remem- David remembers as he looks at the business card to call after 8 p.m. He thinks that Elias doesn't want to have his name publicly viewable. David checks his watch, realizing it's still early morning. He decides to wait in his car until a more appropriate hour to contact Professor Price. Okay, so kind of took our character and threw him in there. That's fine. I mean, what else can we do if Elias Price? Well, let's say that we're incredibly impatient. Okay, took a little water break. So David's impatient. He maybe let's say he's sitting in his car thinking of what to do, and then he starts to hear like voices of his great. He's hearing voices of Elias. No vision, just like voices around him. As mm, a lion, he's attacked by a lion suddenly. Okay, um, gotta focus here. As David sits in the car patiently trying to figure out what to do, either go home or stay in the car, try to find someone else who knows Elias, maybe he's here. While thinking, contemplating, he suddenly hears the voice of Elias, his great great grandfather, though echoing around the car, 360 around him, causing David to panic. He doesn't see Elias, just hears him. Whispers in the distance as if it's through the car in stereo. All right, this will be a sanity check because this is like his mind is effed. The whispers echo, swirling around David, chilling him to the bone. The blood, it calls. The tide, it rises. The car's windows fog with an unnatural condensation. Strange, briny scent fills the air. So we gotta roll a sanity check. 49. Okay, that's unfortunately not going to work. So I'm gonna roll a d4 because this is not the worst experience. 1. Okay. Oh, yep, 1. So we go down just one peg. One peg. So we're down to 40 now. I'm gonna write that right there. All right. Now let's see. Hmm. Wait, what does? Hold on a second. I almost forgot. What does his wife do? His ex-wife do? She's a freelance journalist. No, I don't think that'd be too coincidental. I was saying like he panics, gets out of the car, and bumps into her, but that's like one out of a million people or so. He just happens to be there at the very moment. That's way too convenient. So, um, David panics, failed sanity roll. He tries to open the car door. Let's see if it opens. The door handle's cold, slick with moisture. As David touches it, a vision floods his mind, a vast underwater city. It really wants to push the city. Cycloning arena, saw creatures and chorus of whispers. Let's scrap the message for the Oracle. Let's scrap the underwater city for now. Maintain this paranormal experience as just audible moments. Let's see what it does here. Wondering if it will walk that back. 'Cause again, I don't want that. It's trying. It's really trying to give us something huge here. The whispers intensify, swirling around David like a vortex of voices. The blood remembers the tally is claimed. The car's interior grows colder, the hair heavier with the brine and decay. I will say, because the door handle, let's say, what can we use to try to push the door open? It's not opening for some reason. I'm thinking what skill to use here. Because strength is just 11. There's no percentage for it. I think this would be jump, maybe? No. Trying to think what would be good here. Track survival? No, there's no survival. Which Cthulhu skill would be used for trying to open the door as it's struggling to open? So the Oracle says. Climb, maybe? 40? He's not really a strong guy. Parent skill will be strength to force the door open, whatever unseen resistance holding it shut. I can roll 3d6 and roll under strength. Try that. Or I can try climb. It's 40. Physical. That's physical effort. Let's do climb. I know that's not exactly climbing, but I just want to give it a shot. 40. 40! I got 40 exactly. Right on the dot. So I will mark that. Okay. Check that. 40. Successful roll. We are able to open the door, and David jumps out to clear his head. Does the sounds or whispers still linger? Hmm. The whispers fade as David stumbles out of the car, grasping for breath. The campus seems to press in on him, opposing buildings casting long shadows. Huh. Okay. David becomes impatient. He slams his door shut and thinks about going inside asking around for anybody who might know Professor Elias. He cannot wait any longer. I mean, he could be a professor, an instructor of obviously. I didn't write down his. Shoot, I didn't write the department. Oh, there it is. Anthropology and folklore. I'm gonna write that down. So, anthropology and folklore. Let's see. All right. David strides towards the entrance of the anthropology and folklore department, determination hardening his resolve. The heavy oak doors creak open, revealing a dimly lit hallway lined with dusty display cases. All right. Um, let's see. He needs to find someone who might know. I think what he should have asked Dr. Morgan what he looks like. David forgot to ask Dr. Morgan what Professor Elias looks like, so he is working in the darkness here. Is there anybody around that David can speak to? A student, staff member? A lone student sits hunched over a book at the far end of the hallway, their face obscured by thick stacks of papers. Okay. Does the hallway have any doors or classrooms on the sides? Are we talking a traditional university hallway, first floor, with classrooms surrounding? The hallway stretches into dimness, lined with closed doors bearing names and titles, professors, lecturers, and other faculty members. Okay. I'm surprised we can just walk right in. Well, this is the year 1999. We can't forget that. This is Y2K. So, I don't recall if we mentioned we were like a month out or a week out or the night of Y2K, but whatever is happening is going to be happening on New Year's. So, as David walks up to the student, he keeps his eye on each door name label to see if he can find someone, uh, the Elias name. David scans the names on the doors, but none matched Professor Elias Price. He reaches the student at the end of the hall, clearing his throat to get their attention. Tell me about the student. What do they look like? What are they doing? See. I have to give credit here. I think Gemini is doing a fantastic job. The student looks up, startled, revealing a young woman with a wide, intelligent eyes and a shock of bright pink hair. She's surrounded by open books and handwritten notes, the faint scent of the coffee lingering in the air. Okay, so what's David do here? David's gonna try a psychology roll to me to see if she's just too busy to speak to or if she might be of help. So let's roll for it. 15 or less. Fail. Okay. Failed psychology roll. David is not exactly a social person, but he tries his best to speak to her, asking her if she knows anybody by the name of Professor Elias Price. Sales psychology roll. Whatever. The student frowns slightly, pushing a strand of pink hair behind her ear. Professor Price, I've heard the name, but it's not officially on the faculty. Maybe a visiting lecturer or something? Let's see. This is the late 90s. She's a college student. Can you update her dialogue to reflect that those times? How would she would talk? I'm curious if it like she's not gonna be. She's probably speaks in some slang from the 90s. The student frowns slightly, pushing a strand of pink hair behind her ear. Professor Price, that's like a weird one. I've heard the name, but it's not officially on the faculty, you know? Maybe a visiting lecturer or something? It's all hush hush. All right. Shoot, this is going nowhere. David apologizes for wasting her time, but if she can direct him to perhaps a staff member or a reception desk of sorts, anybody who works here. The student shrugs. No worries. The department office is like just down the hall, first door on your left. They might know something, but those guys are usually pretty close, pretty clueless. Okay, so he thanks her. He makes his way down the hall to the left. What does he see? The first door on the left is marked Department of Anthropology and Folklore. Administrative office. A small frosted window reveals a dimly lit room, a cluttered desk, and a figure hunched over paperwork. Oh, okay. Does the person inside see David through the window? Hmm. The figure inside glances up, their eyes weaning David's through the frosted glass. They seem to pause, their expression unreadable, before return to their work. David is going to open the door slowly and enter, if possible. Let's see. The door creaks open, revealing a cramped office filled with. You know what? I just noticed I made a mistake here. So I'm sorry. I completely like this is just a very minor mistake. We haven't used it yet, but this is credit rating. I give myself 15 points in credit rating, but that was not. I wrote 15, which 15 is actually the base, so I actually have to bump that up to 30. This is just a random. I feel like I don't even have to mention it to you guys, but I'm trying to be transparent here. 30. I just caught that. I'm looking at my character sheet and saw 1515 when it should be the 15 I added to the base of 15. So 30. There we go. Okay. The door creaks open, revealing a cramped office filled with overwhelming bookshelves and stacks of papers. A middle aged woman with a stern expression sits behind the desk, her gaze fixed on David. Okay. David is holding the folder closed in his hand, the one that Dr. Morgan gave him, and he pulls out a business card, though not showing it to the lady. He reads the card off to the woman, asking if Professor Elias Morgan is on site today. Oops. There we go. Woman's eyes narrow as she glances at the card, then back at David. Professor Price doesn't keep regular office hours, she says curtly. He's unavailable. Okay, we're gonna end it here. This is a good spot. It's a pretty tame moment. I have to go, but I appreciate you guys watching. This has been another excellent episode. I really like how this is going. And to be honest with you, just for this moment, just for this specific type of one solo RPG using AI, Gemini is doing a lot better here. That's not to discredit GPT. I still prefer GPT in a lot of other things, but Gemini is doing a really great job here. It's staying within the parameters for the most part, like 99% of the responses, but it's just doing a very, very good job. And we've been feeding off the 2 sentence limit and kind of doing that co-op AI. I don't want the AI to do all the work, which at times it does, but I want it to be able to um, share some creativity with the AI's efforts. So I'm going to improve my skills that I've had successful rolls on, which is climb, even though it wasn't a climb, and psychology. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time for The Lost Archive.